Let me bring in now the One Nation founder and leader, Pauline Hanson. Pauline, I've got to ask you, should the Uluru Statement from the Heart just be repudiated completely? Is that your belief?
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yes, it is. You know, Chris, we have to realise that we are all Australians together in this country, okay? Australians have open hearts and they don't want to see any Australian, regardless of race, culture, creed or religion, to be treated any differently. And we're very, you know, warm to looking after other people, making sure they're being looked after. But, you know, we've had this discussion before. I saw the referendum as a divisive piece of legislation. Well, it would have been if it was put into the Constitution. Now, we disagree on that. You mentioned about the sex discrimination, which Jacinta Price raised in the Parliament, which needs to be addressed. We all admit that it needs to be addressed, and we know the issues there. I asked the question of the Prime Minister, and it was answered by Penny Wong as a representative for the Prime Minister in the Senate. And I said about, why did you not support this Royal Commission into child sexual abuse? Her response was, well, it was only raised by one member, one person. No, it wasn't raised. It was raised, I've got to say it was raised, but it was supported by 26 senators, members elected to the Parliament by the people of Australia. So it's not one person, it's 26 members agreeing that we need that. If you had the advisory board, which, you know, it wouldn't have been all Aboriginals voting for them or electing them, they would have been hand-selected by just a few elite Aboriginals to be on that board. And those people, you only have 24. So because those ones who aren't elected by the public, are you saying that their voice would mean more than elected members of Parliament who are calling for this on behalf of these Aboriginal communities and these poor children who are being sexually abused?
No, well, I'm saying that if there was such a body, it would carry probably more weight than the opposition, but we won't know. But my point is this: I want to go back to this first question because I think this is very important, and your answer is what I thought. It is true to what you've been saying for a long time, but I think it's where this political issue is going. The Uluru Statement from the Heart was a result of months and months of consultations right around the country. It represents a kind of historic request from Indigenous Australia about what they want from government, how to achieve reconciliation. You're saying you clearly want to repudiate the whole thing. Are you suggesting, or do you believe, that the coalition parties also want to just reject the whole document?
I can't speak on behalf of the coalition party and what their stance is. You've asked me my views about it. As far as I'm concerned, why should we do a treaty with other Australians? For what reason? You know, you can't tell me that Australians, Aboriginal Australians that are here today have more right to this land than what I do. You know, you treat people on an individual needs basis. This is what I've been calling for since 1996. And last weekend, it was a rude awakening to a lot of Australians who then, over a period of time, were awoken to the waste of money, the corruption, what they're intending to do to bring in a treaty Makarrata. That is a treaty. A treaty what, with their own citizens, that reparations were going to be paid? Or, you know, who else knows what they were going to do? Make seats in Parliament available to Aboriginals purely based on their race. That's what I said today. Get rid of the race-based policies, and it should be clearly based on an individual needs basis. Then we'll get rid of these people who are claiming to be Aboriginal or part Aboriginal, probably as white as what I am, claiming to be Aboriginal. What's that got to do with it? Right, you know, what about the white part of them? You know, I'm sick and tired of hearing this. You know, we are all Australians, regardless of it. If you have a need, we've got 30% of Australians who are actually living in poverty and struggling, homeless. Why don't we look after them also? Treat them the same as what we consider the Aboriginals. Aboriginals have to take responsibility for their own actions. They have to take responsibility for the domestic violence, for the drug and alcohol abuse, for also the sexual abuse of their children. It is not the fault of every other white Australian to wear this brunt that they're trying to blame us for. Take responsibility for their own actions, their own communities.
I just want to get your clarity, and there it is on this issue, because I think this is where this debate is heading. You're going to have the coalition parties opposing the Uluru Statement, not just the voice that's been and gone, but the whole shebang, and Labor trying to find some way to support it. So it's going to be fascinating, and it's going to make sure this division goes on a bit longer than we anticipated. Just briefly, before I let you go, a bit of breaking news. I want to get your comments on this. A tweet from your party today talks about Fraser Island, now known as K'gari, saying that the naming of that island to the Indigenous name should be rescinded. It should go back to Fraser Island. Just quickly, your argument for that?
Chris, why now, after this period of time, that we're going back to Aboriginal names, you know, and they're talking about changing the name of Brisbane? What for? You know, Australians, tourists, it's known in the world as Fraser Island. Why are we changing it to a name that most of us don't even know the language or wouldn't even remember it? You know, I just feel it's pointless. It's about time. The Aboriginals, you know, you're not 65,000 years ago. Come up to the current. I remember Peter Costello and it was Anne Downer used to have a go at me. So she wants to take us back 50 years ago, to the 1950s. Well, these people constantly want to go back to a culture. They say 60,000 years, and I don't believe that. Anyway, they want to go backward in their culture. It's the 21st century, Chris. Okay, let's move forward.
Pauline, thanks for joining us. Forthright as ever. Pauline Hanson there, leader and founder of One Nation. You heard what she says about Fraser Island. We better get to a break.